Today we're going to talk about the Tier 8 French Tech Tree Heavy Cruiser, Brest. I'm going to give you the stats on this ship. I'm going to talk about how it plays and whether I think it's worth grinding to. So we're just going to jump right into it. And to start off, we'll go over the survivability characteristics. HP here on the Brest is 55,300, which, it seems all right to me. It's got 19% torpedo damage reduction. That actually seems kind of high for a cruiser. And you can probably tell just by looking at it that it's a Dunkirk Jean Bart kind of ship, just sort of mini-sized. Along with the survivability, the armor here is at least okay for a cruiser. It's got overmatchable bow and stern plating, 25 millimeters. The bow actually extends pretty much all the way up to that front turret, so there's a lot of real estate there for overmatch. The side armor, at least on the upper plating, is 27, so you can bounce 15-inch guns there. And the deck plating is 30 millimeters, which, it could be helpful against battleships with 16-inch guns. But this thing certainly does take damage from battleships, so you do need to be careful with it. The Citadel is right at waterline, maybe just a little bit above, so it's not especially difficult to hit, and I think you might see us take a couple bad salvos from some enemy battleships in this game, like that Musashi out there, and I think there might be a Yamato. Basically, they hit us anywhere. They can overmatch the armor scheme everywhere. The Musashi does like 10K with 2 shells that don't even hit anywhere especially important. The guns on this ship, which we're firing now at the Bourgogne with the HE, by the way, the HE is pretty good. The guns themselves are pretty good. There are 8 of them. They're all set on the bow like a Dunkirk or Richelieu, and you see there the HE gets a triple fire right off the bat. Fire chance here is pretty good. The guns are 330 millimeters in size, which I think is slightly smaller than the Tier 6 Lyon. But being French, they have good penetration, especially at long range. They don't really seem to lose all that much penetration on the AP. The HE does a maximum damage of 4,800 with a fire chance of 38%. Although the base fire chance is a little bit lower than that. I'm using a skill on my commander, Azerlane Saint-Louis here, which gives me a little bit more fire chance. The maximum AP shell damage is 9,700. These guns range out to 17.7 km. But now we get to the real downside of the guns. Now, when I was playing this ship on my stream shortly after it first released, I only had the hull upgrade. I did not have the range upgrade on the main battery. So therefore, in the 4th module slot, I was using the range mod. Well, I've changed that now that I've got the range upgrade, and I've got the reload mod in the 4th slot. So I am enjoying a 24.5 second reload on these guns, which is incredibly long for a cruiser. And the turret traverse speed is pretty slow for a cruiser. It's 35 seconds with this module. So these guns can feel a little bit unfun, especially because, like many of the super heavy cruisers in this game, they do tend to get wonky dispersion pretty often, and it feels really bad when all of your shells just miss the target, and then you've got to wait out this 24.5 second reload. That right there is the main reason I think people will probably think this ship is not good, at least some of them. The AA defense, I guess, is good. It's got an aggregate rating of 82, and some of the AA does pretty good damage, like the 5.2 kilometer range one does an average DPS of 122, so this thing might be shooting down some planes if you're going to try to go after it with an aircraft carrier. Maneuverability, likewise, is pretty good, although keep in mind this is not fully upgraded, so I've only got a base top speed of 30.6 knots. I think that gets up to 31.5 with the upgrade, and even that is not the base speed unupgraded because I believe I am running the speed flag. But in any case, over 30 knots is how fast this thing can go base. It's got a 720-meter turning circle, which actually seems pretty good for a ship of this size. And then the rudder shift is 13.2 seconds, which is kind of slow, but it's serviceable. The concealment, though, is the major highlight on this ship. We are, of course, running the concealment module in the third slot, and one of our inspirations on Azerlane San Luis is Gunichi Makawa, which further improves the concealment of cruisers. So we are enjoying a 9.5 kilometer detectability by sea. We can actually buff that if we want to by using the Go All Out skill on Azerlane San Luis. If we do that, it does increase the reload time of our engine boost consumable, but we would be under 9 kilometers. I think it would top out at 8.7, maybe somewhere around there, and that's utterly ridiculous for a ship like this because like other French battleships, Jean Bart, Bourgogne, or does Bourgogne have a reload booster? I can't remember. Well, this thing has a reload booster. It's got, I think, 2 charges base, so you can get 3 with fully packed. And if you got Azerlane San Luis, then you can get 4. And of course, these reload boosters, like they are on the Jean Bart, are exceptionally useful. Just ask this Bourgogne here, who's taken an awful lot of damage from our AP into his broadside. There you can see sort of the penetration power of these 330 millimeter guns. They are quite good, and if you're not convinced enough yet, you'll see something here in this next sequence that should cement that for you. By the way, we're up to 78,490 damage now, doing quite a bit with our HE and our AP. That, I think, is really the key to this particular vessel. Sometimes this AP just is not going to do anything, partly because the guns are not consistently reliable, and partly because these are smaller guns. You really do need broadsides for them. They're absolutely lethal to cruisers, of course, and to battleships. They can do a number. The HE is dangerous to destroyers as well, and with that reload booster, you can guarantee sometimes that a destroyer will die if they're spotted and they're close enough to you and you get good dispersion. But really, the AP here, I guess, is the highlight. It's more of a highlight than the HE is. Let's ask this Musashi, who comes around the corner, probably not estimating this ship well enough because he's giving it flat broadside. And, well, he's going to learn his lesson. He takes 1 citadel there, but he does eat 6 over penetrations. So the damage could have been better. I think we just aimed a little bit too high. So we'll correct that here momentarily. Unfortunately, we have no reload booster, but it's about to be off cooldown. Musashi is still broadside. He does, of course, overmatch us everywhere, so he deals an awful lot of damage. But we're able to take him out with 4 citadels in a single salvo. We don't even need the reload booster. And at this point, the game is pretty much wrapped up. So the reason I think this cruiser, or the reason I think a lot of people are going to think this cruiser is bad or mediocre, is the same reason as the Cherbourg. The reload time here is exceptionally long for a cruiser. Even though we have gotten some great results from these guns this match, they're not always this great. The dispersion or the accuracy is just not there some of the time. The shells will miss. The AP can feel a little bit iffy at range because of this, although this next shot against the Sovietsky Soyuz, or the Sovietsky Rossiya, whatever you want to call it, this next shot is at about 14 kilometers. He's slightly angled to us. I think he's going to turn in a little bit. Maybe not. Well, we're going to fire the AP, and we are going to get a good result even at this range. It's about 10... No, not that salvo. It's the next salvo. You see there, though, 2 shells hit the Sovietsky Rossiya out of our 8, and that sort of gives you an idea of how the dispersion goes sometimes when you fire these guns. It's just not pinpoint accurate all the time, and then you've got to wait out this long reload. But in any case, this AP does seem to maintain penetration at range. It can deal good damage to battleship broadsides. It's absolutely lethal to cruisers. The HE can melt down battleships pretty quickly, and that reload booster can sometimes theoretically guarantee you fires. If you shoot an HE salvo, they DCP, you pop that reload booster, instantly you've got 8 more HE shells in the air. They probably take a perma fire for that. So this thing deals damage sort of the same way a battleship would. It's unlike a cruiser in that sense. But the guns are just not reliable enough to me. And then the armor scheme, of course, doesn't offer you much protection. So islands are your best friend, I think. You'll notice that in this match, we tried to play a lot on the flank, and we played around islands. Being on the flank is where you want to be in this thing, thanks to its good gun power, its excellent concealment, and its bad armor scheme. If you're on the flank rather than, say, in the center, that's going to mean that the enemies are only going to be in one segment of the map. That's part of the reason why you want to go on the flank, because then you're not having to worry about getting shot from a bunch of different angles. And then the idea is if you get a good position on the flank, you can get the broadsides of cruisers and battleships and punish those. If you can't do any of that, you can fall back on the HE. What you don't want to do is just push straight in and try to bow tank. It won't work. You've got 25mm bow plating, and you will get stomped, as you saw the Musashi do to us a little bit earlier. So it's a high-speed flanking cruiser, played quite a bit like the Dunkirk or Jean Bar, but in cruiser form. It can deal a lot of damage with this AP and HE, but the guns are inconsistent. The armor scheme is not great for protection, and so I think people will find this ship to be mediocre. I certainly struggled with it a little bit to begin with, I won't lie to you. That's why it's taken me so long to do anything on it. Took me a while to sort of get the hang of the ship, and of course to grind out the necessary upgrades. But after this game and a couple I played shortly before this match, I started thinking this ship is pretty good. I did think it was very good on WoW's PC when I played it. Well, maybe not very good, but certainly better than the Cherbourg. Part of the reason there, though, was because it did have a sonar consumable, if I remember correctly. Doesn't get that here. It only gets reload boost, heal, and engine boost. And I think the reason for that is probably because we only have 4 buttons on our D-pad, so they don't yet know how to map a 5th consumable. But these things having sonar, I think that would be a great improvement to them. And I wish there were a commander skill, or maybe even something built into the ship, some sort of gimmick mechanic, where you could instantly switch shell types the way you can with the Azerlane Dunkirk commander. I think these ships are sorely in need of that. But, you know, they can do well. We do 2,700 base XP and we end with 164,000 damage. So I'd say that's a good result by any standards. And we'll continue to play more of the Brest, because I don't think I've said everything I wanted to say about it. Hope you enjoyed the video. If so, give it a thumbs up, consider subscribing if you haven't already, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.